Section 151-79 of the Code clearly outlines the process for public hearings for rezoning cases certified by the Metropolitan Development Commission. All councilors should have received a copy of those guidelines in their agenda packets for this evening, and will adhere closely to those guidelines and time limits. Councilor Dilk, in whose district the rezoning is located, called the matter out for a hearing at our May 5th meeting as pursuant to our rules. I will call on Councilor Dilk for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll now call the petitioner for the state to state their case. Please keep in mind you have 20 minutes total for your presentation. Regardless of how many speakers participate, you may choose not to use the full 20 minutes or save a portion of it for rebuttal. Our clerk will keep track of all the time, and the buzzer will sound when your time is up. If you do not use a portion of your time, our clerk will record the amount that you have remaining for rebuttal. If you finish before the buzzer, ask the clerk to advise them how much time is remaining.
So can the petitioner come forward? Sir, as I said, keep in mind, and as Councilor Dilk has also said, you have 20 minutes total for your presentation. And how you wish to divide that up is up to you.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Brown, please.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Russell Brown. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Clark Quinn, business address 320 North Meridian Street, Suite 1100 in Indianapolis. In my 18 years of practice, this is the first time I've presented before the full council, and I believe most of you, this is the first time you've had this happen as well. When we stand before the Metropolitan Development Commission, the hearing examiner, the Board of Zoning Appeals, we raise our right hand and swear to tell the truth before you. I will adhere to that tonight, regardless of whether I've been sworn in or not. But I can tell you that what we're giving tonight is dealing in facts related to this petition. With me tonight is Brad Davis from the Davis Building Group, Jeff Jenks and Shaka Coleman, who are here on behalf of the personal representative of the estate of Elsie Dalton, who are the sellers of this property. This petition seeks rezoning approximately 61 largely undeveloped acres with the common street address read into the record. This is proposed to be called the Trees at Southport Crossing, which is an homage to the features of the site itself and a previous project completed by Mr. Davis's father. This image shown here shows a home that would be available in the development, which was the centerpiece home in the home show in January of last year. Go to the next slide, please. The Dalton family has owned this property, as mentioned by the remonstrators, for approximately 60 years, watching development occur around it. There were farm fields surrounding this field when this property was acquired by the petitioner, by the personal representative's heirs. After the passing, the heirs are prepared to repurpose this property from its current passive state. As you see here, this is infill, large in scale, but it is infill development, surrounded by development starting in the 70s on the west, with the bulk of McFarland Farms completed on the north and east in the early 90s, development south occurring in the early 2000s. D3 on the north and west, DP, and D52 to the south. Go to the next slide, please. This shows the aerial, approximately showing the property at current status. You will see it's served by 5 stubs to the existing right-of-way. We've showed arrows showing that. We believe this is evidence that this property has always been planned to be developed. As you'll notice on the left side, which is the west side, that area is largely clear-cut. That has been actively farmed over the years up until very recently. On the east or the west, the right side of the screen, that is an area that used to be a former nursery. It's been referred to often tonight as a forest. It is not a forest. These are trees that were an abandoned nursery, and that's what that has become. It is not clear-cut, it is not scattered site, it is not the typical development pattern of a forest. It is a former nursery, and it looks like this today, given the fact that it has not been utilized for that for a number of years. As you'll notice also on the right-hand side, it is bisected by a high-tension power line. The sellers here have made a deliberate choice not to remove those trees on site. But I can unequivocally say, Mr. Jenks can testify on behalf of the personal representative, that if this is not approved, that likely in the near term, trees would be removed off of this site. That is not a threat. That is just a recognition of where this property is and what has been going on with it over the years. The information has been regularly shared by the attorney for the estate in both public and private meetings, and represents the next evolution of this privately owned DA zoned property if this cannot move forward. That, again, that's not a threat, but it is a recognition of the fact that if a reasonable development of this nature cannot be approved by this body, that the heirs needing to close an estate need to take action on this property. DA zoned property, I would remind you, can be utilized for timbering, for logging activities. It can be utilized for active agricultural purposes, including livestock storage. Based on study completed by the Davis team, there are wetlands on the site, as well as approximately 8 acres of those wetlands, which are kind of on the east boundary and some on the south, will be preserved by commitment if this development is approved. When we started this project, we did go through, do a survey study of those wetland areas, and believe that a cluster subdivision was the appropriate choice for the development at this site. DMD staff can provide you more information about that, but is intended to produce a design and layout which provides a more efficient use of land, protects topographical features, and permits common area and open space. A site must have wooded areas, wetlands, or other environmentally sensitive features to be protected to be considered for a cluster development. We would argue that this site is the prototypical scenario for the creative and efficient use contemplated by Indy Rezone's cluster development. Go to the next slide, please. As part of that process, you are required, and I apologize, you can't see it very well, but you are required to provide what would be permitted here by a straight rezoning. D3 would be the zoning that would be applicable here, and that would yield approximately 150 lots. It would have only about 16 acres of open space and about 7,300 feet of new roads. A density of 2.44 units an acre. It would have full connection points on all 5 public rights-of-way, limited common areas, and limited buffering. The next slide shows what we've worked through the process with on this site. This is what was approved or recommended for approval by the hearing examiner, by the Metropolitan Development Commission unanimously. Shows a lot count of 137 lots. Slightly smaller average lot width, but it does decrease density to 2.2 units per acre. Decreases the number of streets and impervious surface. Nearly doubles open space. On this site, as shown, about 32 acres of this property is open space. 32 acres of a 61-acre site. Preserves 8 acres of existing wetlands and 3 acres of existing tree in the northeast corner of the lot, which will serve as a buffering area to McFarland Farms common area. This was intentionally done to preserve large open spaces, which will be true preservation areas by commitment, which will remain largely in their current state to allow for buffering and natural space for residents' enjoyment and to support wildlife habitat. The site plan incorporates buffer yards, not required under the ordinance, under D3 ordinance, between 40 and 50 feet to buffer existing development from the new proposed development. It provides walking trails within the community available for not only these residents, but for other residents to legally access this property to utilize and enjoy those preserved areas. While the site plan had favorable recommendations to you and from the DMD staff, the hearing examiner, and the Metropolitan Development Commission, at the request of Councilor Dilk, we continued to engage in conversations with the duly elected McFarland Farms Property Owners Association Board about their concerns. The next slide, please, shows the revised plan that came from those discussions. Notably, in the bottom right-hand corner, we have eliminated through traffic between Whitaker Valley neighborhood and McFarland Farms. I don't believe that's the next slide. There we go. That is cul-de-sac now to not provide for through traffic. That, during our 2 public neighborhood meetings, 2 public hearings, was one of the biggest concerns we heard was through traffic between these 2 neighborhoods. So we did remove that as part of the negotiations in the last 6 weeks. Last concession, that was not where we stopped, however. After our meeting with your council last Wednesday and the remonstrators who continued to object to this petition, we made a further revision. I didn't have the ability to put it on screen because this was due to you last Wednesday, but what we've done is eliminate the through street on the north portion of the property. So you have two cul-de-sacs, again, further decreasing the amount of wetlands which are interrupted or impacted by this proposed development. That also moves the lot count down to 132 units. We're now below 2.12 units per acre, significantly less than any surrounding property owner. We believe that this continues to show the developer's good faith effort, despite what we would say has not been a good faith negotiation by all parties, to continue to find a workable solution. The majority of these lots would be served through existing right-of-way on the north and on the west, with those lots, those access points currently existing. These homes will be between 1,400 square feet and 2,300 square feet in size. We have elevations here that are the next three slides. Can go through those very, very quickly. I will also talk a minute about process. During the presentation about why a public hearing should happen tonight, I want to share with you the steps that we have taken, proactive steps we have taken throughout this process to try to communicate with the neighbors. If we can go a couple more slides forward, please. One more, please. So we have, through this process, before we filed a petition, we had a pre-meeting with staff that talked about cluster development versus typical development. There was due diligence done. Some of that's for Davis's benefit, some of it was for the city process. But we did a wetland study, did a heritage tree sample study, and determined that we thought this was an appropriate mechanism to move forward. Upon filing, we made outreach to the three surrounding homeowners associations, held 2 separate neighborhood meetings to meet with the requests of the homeowners association. Preacher's count, I would guess about 100 people appeared in total in those two meetings together. The developer hired A&F Engineering to conduct a traffic operational analysis, which was scoped by DPW staff, and that was included and presented to both the hearing examiner and to the commission. I will skip forward, and I want to put just kind of communicate the last couple things. We've continued to have this process. After the hearing examiner, we made additional commitments. After the Metropolitan Development Commission, we made additional commitments. In preparation for tonight, we made additional commitments. Someone reported to DNR there was an eagle on the site. We hired someone to go out with a drone, make sure there were no eagle nests, to go on site. We had further discussions with DNR to make sure that, in fact, there was no eagles nesting on this site. We believe that throughout this process, we have acted in good faith. I'm going to ask Jeff Jenks to come up and talk for just a minute about where this is in the process with the estate and what the next steps might look like if this is not, in fact, approved.
Mr. President and members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Jeffrey Jenks. I'm an attorney. I'm the managing attorney of our law firm, Jeff Jenks Law. We're located at 450 East 96th Street, Suite 500, Indianapolis, Indiana. I represent the personal representative of the estate, Ronald Dalton, in this matter, so we're sort of co-petitioners in this case. I want to point out a few things tonight in my limited time. Number one, we're very blessed to have Davis Building Group as the developer that's doing this work. We have turned down multiple other offers that we thought were not appropriate to the site. We've turned down multifamily developers. We've turned down national developers and others as we've gone along. We're very pleased with the development plan that Davis Building Group has put forward, particularly the fact that over 50% of this site is being preserved in its natural condition as it is now. It's not green space like a big giant lawn. They're leaving everything there as much as possible without clear cutting it. So we're very pleased with that. We think that Davis, and as well as the petitioner, as well as my client, are doing our part to preserve as much as possible and also have a balance of providing housing to the community. It is important to note that This is a nursery, and there's a lot of trees on it, heritage trees, and we have resisted the temptation to log it up to this point because the heritage trees add a lot of value to the future development, and we thought if we logged it, we would detract from that overall better use for the community in the future. So we've resisted that. In particular, heritage trees are the high dollar trees that are most valuable to a logger. And so as part of this proposal, that is going to be preserved if it's approved by this council. So we urge you to follow that. I would say also that we're zoned currently agriculture, and if this is not approved, again, not our primary goal, but if we can't develop it and we have to keep it agriculture, then we have to make it productive. And the first thing that we would do from a productivity standpoint would be to log it and then clear it and start grazing cattle or some other type of livestock. We don't want to do that because that defeats the entire purpose of this whole thing. We want to preserve as much as we can, and we want to have a responsible development. We think that's appropriate. That's all I have time for. Thank you very much.
I will conclude our case in chief with a couple of things. You have 16 commitments that are before you. This petition has 16 commitments. Those have evolved over the period of time. We believe that those commitments show the Davis Building Group, a known local builder, understands the piece of property that they're acquiring, understands what the value is, how it impacts neighbors to be a positive development, not a cracker box, as someone described it earlier, but something that people can be proud of when they know that this was developed by Davis Homes. With that, I'm going to reserve the balance of my time for rebuttal.
Very good. Madam Clerk, how much time is remaining? 5 minutes. Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'll now call on the remonstrators to state their case. Again, please remember that you have 20 minutes total for your presentation, regardless of how many speakers participate. You may choose not to use the full 20 minutes or to save a portion of it for rebuttal. And once again, our clerk will keep track of the time, and a buzzer will sound when your time is up. If you do not use a portion of your time, our clerk will record the amount that you have remaining for a rebuttal. So, thank you.
Great. Good evening, council members. My name is Jocelyn Mappis. Again, thank you for deciding to allow this public hearing to go forward today. Again, I am here on behalf of the over 950 people that signed a petition against this rezoning, because we believe in the promise of the city, not just to grow, but to grow wisely. And now I could actually slow down and raise some of the points that I sped through before. I'm sorry. So let me say up front, I understand that there is a perceived urgency around housing, and I understand the pressures that you are under to fulfill this housing. However, I am not sure that the petitioner pointed out the starting cost or the average cost of these homes. So the average cost of these homes is going to be at the $400,000 range. This is not affordable housing. This does not solve anything for residents seeking additional housing or something that makes it better for them. This targets middle-class affluent families to move into this residency. There are better options. There are parcels around this area, 3 that I've identified that are currently for sale, that are not environmentally sensitive lots that are for sale, where we can do higher density, affordable housing. Let this be the moment that Indianapolis stops settling for good enough and setting the bar higher. We need sustainable, community-centered development that serves the public good. The parcel at 7500 South Sherman Drive contains 61 acres of forests and wetlands. If we take a look at the wetland study that was done by Davis Homes, which I have provided on this image here, the purple regions are forested wetlands. Again, if I need to remind anyone of the definition of a forest, it is a large area covered chiefly with trees and undergrowth. There is no denying that this is a forest. Whether it started as a nursery, it has now rewilded into an urban forest. I will be the first to admit that Davis Homes has been willing to engage. They have showed up, they've listened, they've done more than most developers, but good intentions don't erase the risk. This development still threatens to permanently destroy one of the last remaining urban forests on the south side. If we look at this chart again, can we go back to that one? Sorry. If we look back at this, I've highlighted the plan that Davis has. One thing that Davis didn't do in the original plan when presenting it to the public was showing exactly where those wetlands are. They kind of show wetland A, B, and C in very small letters here. Kind of have to zoom in. But when comparing it to the wetland study that was done by Maristream, we can see that Davis Homes is not preserving all of the wetlands. They are building about 20 homes on top of wetlands, and this is the most up-to-date version that Davis has provided to us. This is about more than just trees. It's about infrastructure, equity, and long-term impact. These 11 confirmed wetlands, which primarily of them are forested, absorb water, cool the air, and reduce flood risk. It is not empty space. It is ecological infrastructure. This does help buffer the flooding that we experience. And yet, the developer has said it plainly. Davis Homes said in an email, "We are not in the business of building homes." True. They are not in the business of conservation. This is happening because city policy doesn't protect land like this. The burden falls on the developers and the sellers and not public process. And we are already seeing the costs. Indianapolis has already lost 90% of its wetlands. We are paying for it in flooded streets, failed drainage, and a crumbling infrastructure. When Sundance Apartments went up in the same area, they had to re-mitigate a lot of the flooding since the dirt in that area is already clay. Now, Davis does have a lot of faith in their engineers, but studies done by various organizations such as the Hoosier Environmental Council, the National Wildlife Foundation, and the EPA have all warned about the dangers of wetland development. And this is exactly what we're doing. While we're preserving some wetland, we're not preserving all wetland. We also joke about Indiana's potholes. We've all seen the memes. But they are not just memes. They are visible, expensive consequences of ignoring how land works. Remove wetlands, and the runoff increases. Roads break down, and the public pays. And now we've heard about this troubling threat. If the council votes no, the estate will log the land and put grazing animals on it. I am not calling it a threat, but I will call it what it is. It is a public pressure tactic, one that the MDC hears on a day-to-day basis. It does nothing to fix infrastructure or serve the public. Unlike development, logged land can reforest, as evidenced over the satellite images from 1992 to 2015. As seen by these 30 years of difference, the land has the ability to rewild. But if we bulldoze and pave the wetlands, that damage is irreversible and permanent. This council should never be forced to legislate under threats. That is not how public policy works. And there is another concern. We don't even know if this rezoning is procedurally valid. This land is a part of a supervised estate, one that is still open under probate court. Mr. Jinks mentioned that he sort of is a co-petitioner, but why isn't he on the petition? A motion was filed in probate court to question whether the estate even has the legal authority to rezone it. It was dismissed, not on merits, but because the filer didn't have standing. So here we are, voting on a petition with no legal clarity. We need to stop only permitting development and start incentivizing preservation. Imagine a program that rewards wetland protections. Let's make conservation of urban forests viable and profitable path for landowners. That is the kind of growth that this city needs and deserves. So what are we asking? We're asking to vote no on 2024-ZON-144. In this case, let's raise the bar and let's protect what's left, because when are we going to stop? We've developed 90% of our wetlands. Do we stop at 92, 95, or until they're all gone? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, how many minutes are left? 12 minutes and 53. So this rezoning matter was advertised for a public hearing, and I will now call on anyone in attendance who is not associated in any way with either the remonstrator or petitioner for public comment. If you have submitted a letter or email or signed a petition for either the remonstrator or petitioner, or if you are a neighborhood resident who has already been represented by a chosen spokesperson, your comments would have to be included in the remaining time allotted for the rebuttal. Comments are limited to 2 minutes per individual, and once again, our clerk will be setting the timer so that you will know when your time is up. Please be respectful of the time and conclude your comments when you hear the buzzer. So is there anyone who wishes to give additional public testimony at this time?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. President, my name's Larry Kane. I spoke with you a little bit ago on behalf of Indiana Forest Alliance in support of the proposed reconsideration of rezoning approval on case 2024, zone 144. The Indiana Forest Alliance supports a rescission of the zoning approval by the City County Council because of the substantial adverse impacts to the urban forest on that property, which would result from the rezoning. As you know, through the Forest for India initiative of the Indiana Forest Alliance, we have promoted the importance of protecting urban forests within the city and the county. And we have supported the city's acquisition of privately owned urban forests so that the many environmental benefits of those forests may be enjoyed by city residents. We urge that the urban forest on the subject property, for its many beneficial environmental features, be valued and protected. Those features include a high-quality forest of 45 acres covering 3/4 of the property, with 55 heritage trees and probably many hundreds or thousands of small trees. There's a rich wildlife present on the property with frequent appearances, though no nests, of bald eagles, which is a protected species under federal law. Thirdly, the presence of 11 wetlands on the property. 3 would be protected under the proposal before you. Wetlands are becoming increasingly rare and valuable natural habitats, frequently lost to land development. IFA suggests that the rezoning approval does not appear consistent with the purpose of the applicable environmental criteria. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Jeff Stant. You all know me. I want to finish Larry's sentence that the environment, a lot of the proposed development is on environmentally sensitive area that the comp plan says shouldn't be developed on. A point I heard made about, if we don't get this approved, well, we kind of have no choice but to begin farming it. Well, one of the largest kinds of farming in the state is silviculture, forestry. And you go to the large private timber companies in Indiana, Pike, Trident, they've logged some of the land that Mary and I own out in Owen County. They make great money off of selective logging operations that leave most of the canopy intact. So the idea that they have no choice but to clear it and begin leasing it out to agriculture or selling it to people for livestock grazing in the middle of that area, well, you're going to have plenty of neighbors upset about that. And they have, if we're talking about a nursery, the same thing that the Luger nursery did. You thin out your walnuts with time. If you don't, you're going to have an allelopathic effect hurting all the walnuts. So there's all kinds of reasons why they can practice sustainable selective forestry on that land as part of agriculture and still leave it intact if they decide that they're not going to talk to the city about preserving it as a park should you turn this down. They don't have to clear it for grazing or row cropping. And another thing they could gain from that is the city is engaged right now in a carbon market program, an exploratory market where they're looking at leasing out some of the public land, parkland for that. This could be part of that market. There's a protocol for selective forestry in the carbon markets that could reward them for being in the markets practicing selective forestry. Thank you.
Eddie Hager, 2839 South Pasadena Street. So when I first come upon this proposed project, the very first thing that I looked at was the technical side. These people back here don't know the technical side. I was shocked in 35 years of doing zoning that dead people are doing the petition. The husband's been dead since 1978. The lady's been dead, respectively, since 1920 or 2020. When do dead people come up here and speak to you? Who's directing the attorney? That's the first thing that got me off kilter. The other thing, after speaking with some of the neighborhood association group, one gentleman signed off on this. Would this council stand if Mr. Voposley voted and held all of you accountable for it, and only he voted for it? You look at the petition, it's loaded with people that they had no idea this was even going on, let alone got their permission to hold them legally bounding legal document and their property bounding to a document, and they didn't even know about it. That's what these attorneys got paid for. They weren't here to develop. They were here to divide and conquer, this group back here. And I ask that you, again, be good stewards of Marion County, be good stewards of Southport, be good stewards of this neighborhood, just as if it is your neighborhood, just as if it's in your mom and dad's backyard, or your brother and sister's backyard, or your own backyard. Be good stewards. Thank you.
All right, at this time, petitioners may use the balance of their 20 minutes for a rebuttal of previous comments. Madam Clerk, if you would mind, could you remind the petitioner of the time they have remaining?
5 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Brad Davis, the president of Davis Homes here in Indianapolis. I've been doing this for about 39 years. This is my first time before the City Council, so I appreciate your audience. Sorry it's so late tonight. I wanted you to know that we started with a plan to preserve the wetlands. I think there are about 10 acres of wetlands, and we preserved almost 8.5. So the thought that there are 20 lots destroying wetlands, it just doesn't mathematically make sense, because we're only 2 to the acre. That means we destroyed 10 acres, so that mathematic, it just isn't accurate. But we got with the city staff, Ms. Blackburn, and she said, boy, we recommended the cluster option so that we could intentionally preserve trees and preserve wetlands. And so that's the site plan that you saw. We're proud of it from that standpoint. I'm not saying compared to nothing ever happening on this site. I understand that. But I think at some point this site will be developed. And then when we went to the sellers and we said, and I was hearing the concerns, I said, what are you going to do with this site if for some reason we don't go forward? And they said, we're going to we will more than likely log the site. And that means all the trees are removed. So if I'm in your seat and I'm thinking to be a good steward, which I agree, of the site, and to preserve trees and to preserve wetlands, 8 out of 10 acres, I think a responsible development, I think, is the best approach. So thank you very much for your time.
I indicated at the beginning to you I was going to speak in facts. Here's 2 court orders authorizing the personal representative to sell this property. One specifically names Davis Homes as the proposed buyer. So, fact. Second fact, ES designation in the plan book does not say that you cannot develop it. It specifically states that is not intended for the preservation of open space. It's intended to promote and encourage development like this, which is creative, which preserves wetlands, which preserves existing heritage trees. Agricultural uses, agricultural timber does not have to preserve heritage trees. There's no obligation. You want to preserve heritage trees or you want to have mitigation for that, it has to be removed for the purpose of development. We believe, and as you do, as your planning staff does, that you have a right to rely on the comprehensive plan. The plan here has been in effect since 2018. I remember because I was on the Lawrence Township Committee. I think you put me there. Since 2018, this has been designated for suburban residential development, not open space. Never been designated for open space. Always been contemplated for suburban residential development. If we were proposing something else, if we were coming in here with D6 and we had 3-story, 500 units, first of all, I wouldn't be standing here, but secondly, I'd understand we're not in compliance with the comp plan. Here, we believe we are in compliance with the comp plan. Your hearing examiner recommended positively. Your zoning staff has been favorably recommendation throughout the entire process. The Metropolitan Development Commission unanimously gave a favorable recommendation. To follow up on Brad's point, the neighbors and I have a difference in definition of some. We have about a little more than 10 acres on this site of wetlands. We're preserving more than 8. That's a majority, more than a majority, super majority. I certainly believe it is more than some. We believe that what is before you tonight, what has the favorable recommendation, is in conformance with the comp plan. It's in conformance with exceeds the development patterns of nearby properties. It promotes responsible development and growth by a local builder having similar or lower intensity to nearby residential developments, and will continue to attack a deficiency of housing stock. Are these the starting point? This is not a $400,000 starting point. We talked about an average price of $400,000. For new construction in Marion County, that is a base level. That is an introductory quality development that you can be proud of if and when this is approved and is able to move forward. With that, we would ask for your favorable vote to uphold the decision of the Metropolitan Development Commission tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I will now call on the remonstrators to use the balance of their 20 minutes for a rebuttal. Madam Clerk, can you remind the remonstrators? 12 minutes, 53 seconds. One more time, please.
12 minutes and 53 seconds.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. As Mr. Brown put it, it's a base starting point, not affordable. And also, again, I would like to point out that city policy doesn't protect land like this. He is correct. There is no requirement for the developer to preserve all of the wetlands. However, the wetlands that they are building on, the 2-ish acres that they are building on, are forested wetlands. Someone brought up a point earlier today, and I'm going to have the help of someone from the Indiana Forest Alliance to further elaborate on exactly the mitigation and process that comes with building on top of a wetland. But forested wetlands hold an insurmountable amount of water that buffer flooding on neighboring cities. Our policy doesn't protect these wetlands. Again, I ask to the council, when do we put a stop to developing on wetlands? We're at 90% gone of Indiana wetlands. When do we stop? This could be our chance to turn it around and make sure that we are preserving so that we're not paying the costs with further administrations down the line. Could you help me with the development of forested wetlands, please?
Help
speak on that.
Well, I don't know where the permitting process is for their development of this site in terms of, but if they're going to develop in forested wetlands and they're above a certain threshold of acres under the state statute, they're going to have to seek permits for developing in isolated wetlands that are a high-quality type wetlands. And the highest mitigation ratio they'll have to meet will be if these are forested wetlands. And that's because the state policy says those are the most valuable ecologically of the wetlands. You got to replace it with the greatest amount of acres of mitigated land. So I don't know if they have all this worked out, and if they have some deadline to reach a sale agreement by September, they better have these permits just about ready and all approved, because it's going to take a little time to walk those through the IDEM. Despite the state legislature's effort to weaken those requirements, there still are requirements for wetlands that are that high quality. So that'd be one thing I would urge you to consider. There's someone else who wanted to speak. Did you want?
I'll give it a brief try. There should be someone else. Hello again, and Mary Bookwalter from the East Side. I am familiar with the kinds of things that can happen, sir. With if you don't do it, we please, we'll log it, or we'll build a spite farm. This is Mr. Pittman is famous in Carmel for building his hog farm upwind from all of the beautiful big buildings on Meridian Street that got put in when the city council there wouldn't allow him to put in some of his own development. Now he has his development, I'm happy to say, and the cattle and the trees are gone. So he's done well with himself, and also out in Zionsville as well. But this is not a tactic that is gentlemanly, and I thank you. I know you wouldn't do that, and I don't think heirs of people who left this land alone and left it for some good reason that they had values of some type. And there's also the traffic and the night and the smells and the odor, even from a good cattle farm, let alone a confined animal feeding operation. So there are things to be concerned about with that. And this development, is, like all of them, are speciously lovely, and people are doing their very best to encourage the highest and best use of, well, things that are going to be lost forever. So I thank you, and I hope you consider this carefully with an open heart. And thank you.
Good evening again, or good night, as it's almost 11. Amanda Nick Stant, 7557 Perla Court in McFarland Farms. I just wanted to reiterate again that we are in legal proceedings with our HOA board, who they've entered into these contracts with. They do not represent us. The HOA knew that we were in the process of having them removed and undergoing legal proceedings when these documents of agreement were signed with them. They do not represent us. We have also last week filed 3 legal injunctions against the estate due to some questionable wording and some things we have found in documents that don't even know if this can be rezoned for this once we go through the court process. And those papers have been filed, and we're waiting for our court date on that. So we just really urge you guys to vote no right now until all these legal issues can be worked out. There's a lot of things going on here that are backdoor, and a lot of that's through our neighborhood, which is really sad to say. So we want to get that rectified. We want what's best for the Dalton family, for the heirs of this property. But also in doing this research, we don't believe that that's what their parents wanted for this property either, was to see prefab homes go up on here. So we just urge you strongly to vote no and let us have our chance to work out these legal issues and potentially go back to the drawing board with Davis in the future, but now is not the time for this property. Thank you.
Is there any time left? How many? 6 minutes. Well, I kind of had to rush through this carbon market thing. It all sounds like pie in the sky, and it's not. Cities are actually doing carbon credit programs, Pittsburgh, Seattle, Richmond. There's a long list of them now. There's certification agencies set up to help urban woodland owners enter the carbon markets. It's not just public lands they're putting in them. The cities are using them as ways to keep private woodlands instead of clearing them. And one of the main protocols is for selective logging projects where woodland owners that agree not to clear their whole canopy and just do selective logging operations follow a certain protocol, and they get a large payment up front and then annual payments every year for a 25-year contract is what's typical. But and the city of Indianapolis is investigating a carbon credit program on its parklands with, I think, about 500 acres. And Morgan Mickelson was here tonight, and as you recall, she was involved in that, and Phyllis Boyd elaborated on it further to the Environmental Sustainability Committee. There's no reason why we couldn't try to add some private lands into that program to reward woodland owners like the owners of this property who are not saying they want to be vindictive to the surrounding community, but saying that they've got to move forward with some kind of agricultural use if this is going to be denied. And then you've always got the option in the future of when the city finally does start allocating some meaningful dollars for forest acquisition and green space preservation of buying the property from them then if they would be interested in that. And the alternative of them just going in and clearing the place, it's going to cost more per acre to clear the woods out. And the property value, people don't want to live in a denuded environment when eventually it is, if it does get turned back, rezoned residential. The cost, I would argue, to go to row cropping versus just starting to manage for timber production selectively on that place, this row cropping would be sky high. So I just think you shouldn't be, on the basis of worrying about what they might do, deciding not to do what you think ought to be done here. You should make the policy that you think should be followed to conserve important forests in the city the key here, not what you think they will or won't do later. And then, we see where we're at later with the property owners, working with them, trying to find ways to work with them. But I don't think the property owners here telling you, I'm going to clear cut this land if you don't approve this tonight. They're purposely saying they're not going to be vindictive, but they're just going to pursue some kind of agriculture. And we'll see. We'll see. I think you need to set the policy, and that's what we're asking you to do. Thank you. Is there someone else?
Hello, my name is Tatiana Craig. I live in McFarland Farm, and I maybe don't understand so much because it's English my second language. But I want to say very simple things. Well, our forest. When you go to the Greenwood, you have a bike trail. When you go to the downtown Indianapolis, you have Monon Trail for hiking. Everywhere we have something development for the people, for the activities. In the Southport area, in the green space, we don't have hiking area. We don't have bike area. But here is now David's home show only little piece in the computer, on the screen. If they show big area in the Southport, will you find any forest? No. There is no green space over there, no hiking area anywhere. We have people surrounded a lot of the, they can like to walk, like to hike, like to ride bike. I ask you, please buy this area, and Marion County, please buy this and make for us walking trail. Thank you.
I want to say thank you for your presentations this evening. At this time, any counselor who wishes to speak will be allotted 2 minutes each for questions or debate on the rezoning issue at hand. So, counselors, comments? Councilor Dilk.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've thought about this a lot. In a perfect situation, I'd love for it to stay a forest. My fear is that whether it's a threat, whether it's not a threat, the seller can do whatever they want with that land. My fear is if they come in and log it, now we have no forest at all, or trees. I think Davis has put together a decent plan. You know, we're talking about saving 8 acres of a 10-acre wetland. They're saving a lot of trees. They're trying to do the best and work with the community. But again, my feeling is, and the city doesn't have $2.3 million to buy this land. So again, I don't want to see it logged. I don't want to see a cow farm there. And I'm sure most of the residents that live over there do not want to live by a cow farm. If you've ever lived by one, you don't want to live by one. So, you know, with that comment, you know, I would like to pursue that they follow the MDC approval and we go ahead with it.
Councilor Boots.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm sure Davis Homes is well intended with this project, but on such a significant night where the first time in the history of this city we've set aside funds dedicated solely for the preservation of urban forests, I would find it ridiculously contradictory for us to vote to take away any forest land that's left on the south side. So being a big advocate of the forest preservation program in our spring fiscal, I have no choice but to vote against it this evening, and I encourage my fellow colleagues to vote no as well.
Very good. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I just want to say I too have spoken with representatives of the estate who were here last month, with Councilor Dilk, with some of the remonstrators on this case, tried to hear it all sides as well as I could. And I certainly have sympathies with the landowners who I spoke with at length. In a fair world, they should not bear all the responsibility of preserving forests and wetlands at their own expense. In many ways, they're left holding the bag right here because the city doesn't have appropriate wetlands protection. I would support the expenditure of city funds to acquire this land to better ensure its use for a park. Unfortunately, that's not what's on the agenda today, but this public hearing is meant to allow a political decision made by our political representatives. What the Metropolitan Development Commission has heard, what the Zoning Committee, what all of our city staffers have done is look at what the laws on the books are and make recommendations to us, but it's beholden to us as political representatives to think about the future of this city and what we want to create for that. And so, you know, I'm happy to work with the developer or property owners to help find a better solution in the future, and I regret that I'm forced to vote no today without being able to appropriate funding to meet that need, but I will be voting no all the same. Thank you.
Councilor Cahill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that one of our earlier amendments would have put the money needed to preserve this. The city would have had the money if we had passed one of our amendments earlier tonight. Unfortunately, we now only have $1 million instead of $2.3 million to purchase this land.
Yes, Leader Hart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, and this is a tough fork in the road, because one of the things that, you know, I've been through this process. I've been here long enough to be through a hearing, and we've almost come to this point on a few. And one of the things that I learned early on is that there's a historical precedence of taking the lead of the district counselor. And I highly encourage that we follow that lead. We heard a small amount this evening in time. It was a lot of detail, but I know these folks have been working on this a long time. There's things that Councilor Dilk has seen, conversations, experience that we haven't been there. We don't know that. And that's why there has been a longstanding precedent to support the district counselor beyond the beliefs and feelings that we have because we just haven't been there. We are the leaders of our district for a reason, and we bear the burden of the decision, whichever way that goes. And I don't say that lightheartedly, considering that this Friday I have a meeting with 3 of you fellow councilors to preserve the east side flatwoods in my district. And it is like I said earlier on in the statement, a fork in the road for me because I did move to amend to put more money. I am actively having conversations to preserve urban forest in Marion County. And finally, the last piece of this is, this is a product of, where we are and the rules that we have set up. We are in a position where we're at the end of the line. And it's not the place we need to be if we're preserving urban forests. We've got to be ahead of it like what we're doing this Friday. Because we need to have the conversations before somebody's already trying to buy that land, or else we're never gonna get it. And with that, council, I urge you to support the district councilor, keep that precedent, because they've seen more than we've seen. Thank you.
Good. Councilor Nay.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'll keep this brief, but I too would just like to express my intention to support Councilor Dilk as a district councilor in this situation. I first and foremost want to thank those who were part of the remonstrating side as well as the petitioner side for staying through a very long and challenging meeting this evening. We appreciate your attention and time to this issue. But reviewing the facts, both outside of this meeting and during the public hearing portion, obviously there's been a lot more than what we just heard, and I understand that this went through the hearing examiner, it's gone through the Metropolitan Development Commission, I do believe it passed unanimously, and so this council was tasked with providing more time for the petitioner and remonstrator to work things out, and ultimately to decide whether or not it should uphold what the MDC has already decided. And because Councilor Dilk has affirmed his support of that decision, I too will affirm my support for this particular case. Thank you.
Very good. Councilor Delaney.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to just ditto what Councilor Hart said in terms of respecting the district councilor. As somebody who fairly recently went through a similar situation in my district, I sat through hours and hours and hours of meetings and calls and conversations that, as you said, most folks wouldn't have known. And I do want to note that I have used my $1 million allocation for District 2 to attempt to preserve the Haverstick Creek Woods. So again, it's not lost on me that your comment and Councilor Nay's comments are all coming from councilors trying to preserve woods in our district. And so I just think it's really important to follow the district councilor who believes that this is the best way to preserve the most trees and the most wetlands in his district.
Very good. Additional comments? All right. Councilor Dilk, closing comments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I'd just like to reiterate, in a perfect world, I would love for it to stay a forest. We do need more forest land. I wish we had the money to be able to do it, but we don't. I think Davis Homes has put together a good plan. They're leaving wetlands, they're leaving trees. Is it an ideal situation? No, it's not, but I think it's the best one on the table because, as Mr. Brown's already said, the owners of the land, if it falls back, it is agriculture, they can do whatever they want. Is it an idle threat? None of us know that, but I'm not sure I'm willing to take that risk to say we're preserving some trees, we're preserving some wetlands, or the alternative is we might not have any trees at all. So again, in a perfect world, I'd love for it to stay a forest, but I'm trying to be realistic because we're progressing. We're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to have more people that are wanting houses And again, I think what Davis has presented is the lesser of the evils. Thank you, Mr. President.
Oh, very good. I will ask then if you have a motion to put on the table.
Yes, Mr. President, I make a motion that we confirm NDC's approval and proceed with Davis Homes.
Mr. President, Mr. Dilk, is it that, are you asking to confirm MDC's decision subject to the commitments?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All right, it's a motion and a second on the table. One last chance for comment. All right, just know, according to state law, a 3/5 majority vote, which is 15 votes, is required to overturn any zoning decision certified to the council by the Metropolitan Development Commission. Any vote less than 15 shall be declared as indecisive, and the proposal shall take effect pursuant to IC 36-7-4-608 C3. Based upon Councilor Dilk's motion, a yea vote will be a vote to approve the MDC's decision and adopt the petition, MDC's decision with commitments, and adopt the petition with additional commitments. A nay vote will be a vote to overturn the MDC's decision and deny the petition. So, Madam Clerk, could we go to the board, please?
Just as a reminder, Mr. President, I am abstaining from this.
All right, could you indicate that? Thank you. Thank you so much.
I don't think I do that. I think the clerk staff does.
Oh, very good. All right, that motion carries 16 yeas, 7 nays, and 1 abstention. Thank you. Thank you all for your patience this evening as we go through this. There is no business under special orders, unfinished business. And we will proceed then to special orders, final adoption. And this next item on our agenda is Proposal 145, referred to Metropolitan Economic Development Committee. Chairwoman Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Proposal number 145 approves a statement of benefits for Kimball Electric Indianapolis, Inc., an applicant of tax abatement for property located in an economic revitalization area. The proposal passed out of committee by a vote of 9-0. Mr. President, I so move.
Motions are moved and seconded. Are there comments from councilors? All right, seeing none, let's proceed to the board for our vote. Motion carries 24-0. Next item on our agenda is proposal number 146,